Hello and welcome back to World of Warcraft. My name's Lumin and right now, time for another challenge mode dungeon run. This one is a gold run on Scholomance, and I gotta say Scholomance was fun. Okay, it has a really long timer, there are lots of bosses, there's a lot of encounters that you've gotta learn, a lot of tricky trash pulls, but for the most part, it's a little more relaxing, I guess, than some of the others because of the timer being a little more slack. Now our group is one member different here. We got Vorashsokar, a Warlock, instead of the Rogue we had in a previous run. And I think because of that, our single target DPS is a little bit lower. But we do have that extra Shadow Fury and a whole lot more AoE damage. It was okay. It worked reasonably well. If I'm not mistaken, the pit actually helped out quite a bit too. But let's move on to the instance proper. So these two Risen Guards, the first trash pull, there's nothing really tricky about them. There's nothing really dangerous about them. They just take a bit of time to die, and I guess we could have saved some time if I had moved back to the balcony while we were killing them, if I had just kited them a bit, and I think it would have also been a bit quicker if we had stacked. But now on the first boss, on Instructor Chillheart, we get all the party members close by, and then as we jump into the air from that little ledge, one of our Warlocks just taps the boss, so enters combat with the boss, so that it despawns all the mobs in this surrounding area, all but two. Okay, there are two Risen Guards that patrol around the edges, and on the tries that we did pull those Risen Guards, even just one of them, we lost too much time to even consider making gold, so it's kind of important that you get your party members stacked up in a nice little line in the middle of the room and you don't aggro the two on the sides. But otherwise, the boss is just a straight up DPS race. You got to kill the boss before that wall reaches you. You got to avoid the Rings of Frost that the boss summons, and it also casts a debuff on you that damages people nearby. So then again, you got to be careful if you run to the sides. So once you kill her, the phylactery spawns, and you got to do the same thing on that. You got to once again just start DPSing it as quick as you can, take it down as quick as you can, and I suppose the rest is simple. It's exactly the same as in Heroic. Once you start on the phylactery phase, there are these flying books, there are these random little, like, frost orbs that spawn around the room. There's basically just a whole lot of stuff you've got to try and avoid. It's very chaotic, so once it starts up, I usually pop Devotion Aura, I get my Divine Protection up, I try to take as little damage as I can, but, you know, it's difficult. These things are kind of random, or at least they look kind of random. They do actually go in set patterns, so if you find yourself a good spot to stand in this phase, rather just stay there and you will be safe mostly. We end up standing in a lot of stuff and we make life for the healer really, really difficult, but we got through. And I think the most important part again is just that we got through without aggroing the two Risen Guards on the sides. It just happened. Sometimes it just happens. Someone isn't watching their flank and they aggro one of them and that slows you down a whole lot. If you do aggro one there, you could potentially just pull it down here and kill it along with this one. But with this one, what we do is we actually pull it into the next room and kill it with the next pack. So that will all just add up. I guess if you're going for that gold run, you're gonna want to reset if that happens. In this specific room, you could actually pull all the skeletons and all the candlestick mages at the same time, but that's slightly higher risk, and you don't need to gamble like that with this run because the timer is slightly more slack than some of the others. But the candlestick mages, you just gotta face them away from your group, and other than that, they straightforward to tank. I think, as with most trash packs in this challenge mode thing, you gotta just keep them crowd controlled as much as you can. Stuns, interrupts, whatever you've got, whatever your group has at its disposal, you use. But we chose to pull them in two groups. So there are two candlestick mages there in the middle, then there are three more at the back here. I usually just pull them, I throw Consecrate down, sometimes I throw the Hammer of Light down as well, and they will stack up in front of me. I will get aggro on them, and I just face them away from the party again. It's not all that difficult, and again with the double Shadow Fury from the Warlocks, we did reasonably well on the slightly bigger pulls. Now, for your healer, this could be quite a bit of damage to heal through, so you'll see that Zohee cast the Pain Suppression on the first pack, and on this pack here, I just tried to keep my Shield of the Righteous up for the most part, because I wanted to save my cooldowns for the next room, which you'll see in just a bit. So once these two Candlestick Mages are either down or close to down, you can move into the next room where you'll find Jandice Barov, the next kind of deadly boss if you don't do it properly. She's interesting. The mechanics on her are very interesting. So her basic AoE attack that she does every now and then, it's called Wondrous Rapidity. It does a ton of damage. You'll see it hits our one Warlock here. and just 2 hits from it takes him down to 1/3 of his hit points, and he's got a lot of health. He's a Demonology Warlock, so it's dangerous. Even me getting hit by it's really bad, but then when she casts this, okay, you're supposed to try and find the real one in the pack. We relied on, I don't know, keen-eyed Jemma here, our mage, who always managed to pick the real one out of them. I think she was using the same add-on that I've got on here, the Barov Helper add-on, that helps you identify them, that helps you find the ones that look the same, because you're supposed to find the one that looks like her amongst the pack. She did that every single time, first time, and it was amazing. She pretty much got our gold for us single-handedly on this run. I'm very proud of that. But what happens if you get the wrong ones constantly is that you just keep taking more and more damage. So the damage she does with this Whirl of Illusion is increased every time you kill a fake one. Fortunately for us, however, you know, we had this genius mage here who could track her down almost instantaneously. Now I'm going to start talking about the next room already, because this boss fight is kind of simple, kind of straightforward. You just got to get those mechanics down. You got to get someone who can find the right one immediately and you'll be okay. But in the next room, I used a battle horn to pull everything. It is attainable, I think, by killing the rare Black Hoof in the Valley of the Four Winds in Pandaria, but it's super useful because if you run into the middle of the room and you use the battle horn, it gets you 1 point of aggro, 1% of threat on every single mob in the room, and that just pulls them all to you. And then as a tank, that's useful because I could just throw down my Hammer of Light over here, I could throw down a Consecrate and instantly get aggro on everyone. But at the same time, this is a very dangerous pull because the bone shards that the Bone Weavers cast do a ton of damage, and it's actually a cone. It's like a proper area of effect cone in front of them, so if you face these towards your group, they're gonna die immediately. And again, this is the kind of part where your healer would just have to spam heal constantly. We have the fortunate luck of having our tank and healer in the same room, so it's easy to coordinate cooldowns between the two of us, but I don't think everyone's as lucky as that, so this is the kind of thing you'll have to work through with a group. You know, you'll have to get to know the way the group plays to be able to know when you must use your cooldowns, when your tank is going to use the cooldowns instead of the healer, and so on and so forth. But now, moving on to the next room, there's a bit of RP that happens there while you're busy killing those, which I guess is fortunate you get to avoid. But here comes Rattlegore. He is actually a little bit tricky as a tank. I mean, I was a little stressed out tanking him because you gotta be really quick to pick up the bone armor when you lose it. And everyone in the group needs to do that because he throws this bone spike at someone, and if you don't have bone armor on you, it kind of instant kills you. And now while you're doing that, you gotta watch the boss for the stacks of rustling. So if they get too high, he starts doing too much damage and you gotta just move out of range. But he only gets them if he hits you. So when he gets to around 7 or 8 stacks, you gotta start kiting the boss until they fade from him. So you can see down at the bottom there on his portrait, there are 8 stacks at the moment and they're about to expire. There you go, they're off. Then you can start tanking them again, and you just kind of rinse and repeat on this boss fight. You do the same thing over and over again while watching out for the fire and the bone spikes. It's simple, it's straightforward, but it can be bad if you don't move out of the way before he starts doing way too much damage. Now you'll see there we actually used Life Grip in this fight. It wasn't as effective as it could have been, I guess. I mean, Life Grip has a really long range for the priest, so she could have potentially pulled me when I was on the other side of the room all the way to her, and that would have just given everyone more time to DPS, would have given her some downtime to not worry about healing me, and so on and so forth. You could also, if you have warlocks in your group, which is something we didn't think of at the time, use portals in this. You could put a portal on the one side, and once your stacks get high, you could just teleport to the other side and have him kind of slowly just lumber after you. But again, for the most part, kind of simple fight, but a little bit tricky if you're not watching 100% of the time. You're not paying attention to that bone armor and to the stacks. You should also try kill the boss on this side of the room, so on the side that you're going to exit, just to save a little bit of extra time. Now, in this room, you need to get a lot of your kill count. We're only on 14 out of 35 of the enemies, so we got to get a lot of kills here to make up the total that we need. But at the same time, you can't pull too many of these guys because, well, you'll die. Challenge mode mobs just do a lot of damage, and we chose to just take our time on this room. I know some tanks are actually able to pull the entire room and then they kind of kite them in a circular fashion around the room, but we had the time, so we thought we would just take it slow, take it slightly easier, and again just spread our cooldowns out a little bit. And that's what we did here. It worked out well. You don't have to rush too much on this. Again, this depends on your tank's ability, on your healer's ability, on how much proper AoE stun and damage you have. Some groups might be able to pull this whole room easy. I mean, easy in challenge mode terms, I guess, which is actually not all that easy. But again, Blind in Light, which I just used right there, along with Ring of Frost, which is on the ground under the mobs, and Shadow Fury, and all that other good stuff that you can get, use whenever possible. Especially on these big pulls, which have the ability to, like, one-shot the tank if you're not paying attention. Here I lost aggro on 2 of them. Jemma was quick thinking enough to ice block before she died. Kind of important to have quick thinking DPS. Now, this last pull was by far the biggest one. I saved my 2 cooldowns, Ardent Defender and Guardian of Ancient Kings for it, along with, obviously, Divine Protection. But I pulled the rest of the room because we needed the enemy count, we need to kill them all. We could have actually moved into the boss room after pulling just 2 specific packs or 3 packs in this room, but we chose to get our mob count up here instead. Now, Ardent Defender already activated, moving back into the Power Word Barrier here. She's obviously spam healing me like crazy. Shadow Fury went off there from Safflower, and then in just a mere moment, I think I'm going to activate Guardian of Ancient Kings as well, just to make sure our healer can handle it again, because you can see top left, she's actually starting to run out of mana now, because there's a lot of healing that needs to be done here. And these big guys, they're not that fast. You can actually kite them a little bit while damaging them and while your DPS takes them down. But this entire room here got our mob count up nice and high. You'll see in just a second we are a little bit off our final mob count, and you'll see where we get the last ones too. We didn't want to pull those 2 over there. That was close. I mean, I nearly pulled those 2, and if I did, it would have actually probably been a bad thing, because we are missing exactly 4 enemies now, which we'll get quite conveniently in the next room. Now, here's a little bit of RP that you got to wait through again. They talk and talk and talk. Then you fight Lillian Voss, and if you have heroism, bloodlust, whatever, you use it immediately as this fight starts, because the first phase in this fight is the most important. You got to get it down as fast as you possibly can, as far as you possibly can, so that the rest of the phases, which are more difficult, are shorter. So that's obviously what you try to do. You just try and get her down as fast as you can, as far as you can, before the next phase starts, so that, again, it's shorter, so that your fight will be a little easier, because you'll see the final phase of the fight, it can get a little chaotic. I mean, there's a lot of potential damage there, but once this RP scene starts again, you get so much free damage. Our priest is just smiting and holy firing as much as she possibly can, not really running out of mana, which is once again great. In this next phase, all that you got to watch out for is the fixate. There are a lot of bosses in the game that do this, and it's not particularly difficult to avoid because she walks so slowly. You can't slow her with anything. You can't really snare her or stun her or anything, but, you know, she's so slow that you should, with pretty much any class, be able to just run out of the way while damaging. I mean, with Deadly Boss mods, it's so simple and straightforward, because you can see when the next fixate comes up. It's coming in 2 seconds, and, you know, even if it's on a close range damage dealer, like myself in that case, you can get out of the way. It's not a big thing. So after the fixate phase, there comes the most chaotic phase, which I'm actually saving Devotion Aura for now. I don't have any other cooldowns saved for it. I do have Lay on Hands, which I use kind of regularly in the challenge mode dungeons, because it's such a huge asset and it only has a 5-minute cooldown, so I get to use it more than once in most of them. It does obviously put forbearance in the target, so I can't use Hand of Protection or whatever, but it's still very useful. Now in this phase, she casts Death's Grasp, and then that puts this Dark Blaze debuff on everyone. So everyone spawns these flames behind where they run, and if you do run in the flames that you just put down, you take a lot of damage. So it can get crazy if your group just moves around the whole time, but I did get Devotion Aura off right at the end, which didn't really help. I feel like it was a bit of a waste, but what the heck ever. You know, I tried. This is where we do our Invisibility Potion run. We skip a whole lot of the board students and the professor down at the bottom. Now, on a side note, which I forgot to mention at the start, you can actually get the Polyformic Acid potion here, which transforms you into the professor himself, and then you do a bit of extra damage against the final boss in the instance, but it's only a little bit. It doesn't really help that much. Now, we needed a couple more mobs, so we decided to pull the last board student pack here, which is 5 of them. I think we could have gotten the full mob count before if we had killed the 2 risen guards from the room with Chillheart, and if we had killed the last of the carvers in the room just before Lillian Voss. That would have given us the full count, but these guys die much quicker, so, you know, you could just as well go for this final group. I mean, if you want to skip some mobs somewhere else, like in the carver room, for instance, the one before Lillian Voss after Rattlegore, you could even pull 2 packs here and then move on to the final boss. That's also a potential route that you could take. I wouldn't be against doing that because the board students are easier to handle. They don't have anything super special to watch out for. But now here we go, moving on to the final boss, Darkmaster Gandling. This guy was kind of tricky because of all the different phases that you have to go through and because of the failed students, which were just super annoying. Some groups do things differently here. You'll see that our healer, Zohee, the Discipline Priest, is actually standing right in front of me above on the balcony. So she's out of range of the failed students that run in and explode on your group. That's kind of smart, at least keeps the healer safe, but periodically he puts first the tank, then the healer, and then a DPS, I think, into these rooms, and you got to kill everything in the room before you, well, die or the rest of your party dies, as quick as possible, basically. But another issue that I ran into was that the failed students ran into the room with me, like, just straight through the portcullis there. They don't really care about doors. They run in there, they explode on you, they can potentially do a lot of damage, but once you get out of there, and for me as a paladin that was easy because I had Holy Wrath and I could stun everything, you just continue the fight as before. He keeps casting Immolate and Incinerate. It does a bit of damage, but it's not that serious, and then he'll just toss the next person in. You can see the next harsh lesson is coming in 10 seconds. The harsh lessons on the healers are a little bit different than the one that I had there. I mean, for me it was so straightforward. I just had to kill everything and I was out. I suppose some tank classes would struggle a little bit more than I did there, especially because those were, again, undead. But, like the one on Zohee right now, on the healer, she has to dispel mobs inside, and then she gets out by doing that. But when he summons more failed students here, you just want to pull back, because they actually have this little animation that they do when they climb out of the ground, which takes, I don't know, a good 2 seconds to complete. So if you can kill them before the animation finishes, then you have all the time in the world basically to move out of the range of the explosion. But if they do explode, again, it does a lot of damage. You got to watch out for it. And with the end in sight now, I mean, we have 2 minutes left on the clock. Just this boss to kill, then we're done. We started just using all the cooldowns we possibly could to make sure we survive this, because the Incinerate does a lot of damage. You can watch the chunks that come out of my health the whole time, and in retrospect, using Devotion Aura here to at least cancel out some damage from maybe 2 of the Incinerates would have been a really good idea. It would have taken a lot of the pressure off the healer, because you can see Zoe's already running out of mana. But, I mean, at this point, harsh lesson on Safflower, we have him down to 10%. We knew we had it. I think we were already shouting and shrieking on Skype, because this was the gold. This was the one. I mean, bar any huge catastrophe, this is pretty much the home stretch here. You should be able to take it. I was kind of happy with the time that we got on this one. It was not one of our best runs, and I think that we basically just needed to hustle a little bit more if we wanted a better time, but we didn't really want a better time. Why would we want better than just getting the gold? I guess if we were going for round best or something, then it would have been a different story, but there you go. Gold on Scholomance. I was super happy with this one once again, just because this was the first really long one we did, and this one, as I said at the start, we struggled on for quite some time. We did this for an entire night, and then the next morning, the next day, so it was great. It was a really good feeling to finally get it done. You can see Safflower just passing out there from sheer exhaustion. There you go. You guys can check back here soon for more. I hope you are enjoying the challenge mode videos. I think next up is Gate of the Setting Sun. So that's it. Give it a like, share it, and do all that other good stuff. Most importantly though, happy doing those challenge mode gold runs. Happy that.